Hello, thank you for your patience. I just had a little technical issue, but I'm back and looking forward to our conversation with Dr. Nana. She's an entrepreneur, frontline, we're ER doctor, frontlines of COVID at this time. She also runs myCovidMD. So Shared Harvest Fund is one of her really incredible nonprofit. And then she started myCovidMD with the mission of providing testing and tethering to marginalized communities and making sure that we stay safe and healthy in this pandemic. I look forward to her joining me shortly. I had a minor technical difficulty, but hopefully she'll be on in 1 second. How is everyone doing right now? We are broadcasting for Blackbird, and I look forward to seeing you and having this conversation. So as we know, there's Shared Harvest Fund. So I see they are here, and as soon as Dr. Nana requests in, I will let her in. While we're doing that, where are you guys joining us from? Where are you in the country? We really like to hear where you're calling from. We're facing this pandemic in different ways in different cities and states, but the mainland is not doing so well. So let's just let her wait and we can talk about it. Hello. So as hello. Hi, you're sideways. So, yeah, no problem.
Is that good?
You're upside down. It's okay. I had technical difficulties just getting here.
Does that look like I'm upside down?
Yes.
No.
You're good. No, you're
okay.
Good. You're good. Welcome, Dr. Nana.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Happy
Here we are again. Isn't that what you called it?
Yes. Where are we again?
Oh my gosh. So welcome for everyone who's just joined. This is Blackbird's health update. We're talking about COVID. We're here with Dr. Nana, who is a frontline worker. She's one of our members, and she is an entrepreneur who has Shared Harvest Fund, but also they're running myCovidMD, which is able to do pop-up testing, tethering, telehealth for marginalized communities. They offer it's a little bit easier to access than the county wait lines I'm hearing about. People can't get appointments and things like that. So why don't we start and you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your journey from founder and entrepreneur and ER doctor and to this time we're in.
Wow, thank you. First of all, can you hear me? Because I don't even think my headset is on.
I hear you, yeah.
You can hear me?
Can you hear me?
Okay, well then, free the land and the ears from these.
I think maybe we're just airing through the phone.
Yeah.
Hi, Tamara. Hi, LCDQ. Hello, everyone who's joining. And another thing is, if you're joining us, I mentioned a little earlier, let us know where you're joining from. It's always nice to kind of get a sense of where you are in the country. We're in the middle of this pandemic, and here at Blackbird, we're just talking about wellness with one of our esteemed members. So can you hear me now?
I totally can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, great. So let's go back, introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your career path, and then we'll get into talking about this time.
Yeah, so thank you, Bridget. It's always a pleasure to be among the community. This really just fires and rejuvenates me for the work that we're doing. As she said, my name is Dr. NanaEfua Afoh-Manin. Everyone knows me as Dr. Nana. And prior to this crazy crisis called COVID, I was the co-founder of the Shared Harvest Fund, still am, focused on volunteer-based initiatives that help to reduce student debt for those professionals who are highly impacted by it. And we took this wonderful pivot when the crisis hit as health providers, noticing that there was a huge gap of services for underinsured and non-insured individuals, especially with access to testing, access to resources, access to the facts, right? There was so much information out there. And if you don't have a doctor or someone you can trust to kind of tease through all that nonsense, where were you after all the safety net? And so we built myCovidMD really quickly, launched in March. And since then, we've tested now. We hit the 3,500 mark. We have been in 13 different cities. We are an online telehealth platform for the people, by real people, and providers of color, taking care of our community. So it's been a fantastic journey. It's been a journey of awakening when people think about healing and what is medicine and why do we even get into this work. You know, sometimes you are in the thick of it and you don't know why. And you know, I'm a very spiritual person, and God has a way of getting you right back on schedule. And so one day, like, this is why. So, but what I really love to be here to talk about is really to do what we are doing on the platform, which is to make myself available to answer those questions, those burning questions, and give a reflection about why we're here. You know, I mean, it's summer. I should be at the beach. I should be enjoying my time with my friends in the backyard. Why am I still thinking about COVID? And can I just stop and pretend like it's behind me? The reality is no, and I'm so sorry for all of us who were paying attention and listening and wearing our masks and washing our hands and social distancing, but taking care of our community. You did all the right things, all the right things. And right now we've hit, I think that the last time I saw the numbers, 15 million cases already. Yes. Wow. 600,000 deaths, 9 million recovered. And right now in the United States, you know, the hotspots were Texas and Florida, and now Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. It's not, doesn't take rocket science to understand why those are the hotspots. But when we're dealing with a public health crisis, the difference between public health and individual health is that what the individual does affects the whole. And so this is why we are here collectively, still dealing with pandemic wave 1, not wave 2, wave 1. It's because we got very comfortable. We politicized the idea of wearing a mask. And we enjoyed the sun a little bit too much. And so what does that mean? Let's talk about it. Let's figure out, what does that mean? Let's pull it apart. I can give you all the science behind it, but that's not what I'm here. I want to help you walk away with an understanding of that. What does that mean for your life and your neighbor's life? And how do we get through this together?
Thank you. Well, I'm so glad you're here. This is vital for us to talk about. You and I have talked, you know, again, we're here with Dr. Nana, which is NanaEfua, who is really, we're so honored. We originally, let's just talk about what we thought we were going to be doing.
Right.
We were doing a concert at Blackbird when this all started.
Yes.
You know, we were like,
sounds of goodness, we were planning a party.
It was a party, y'all. It was amazing in partnership with great partners. This whole thing we were planning to do. So I know you guys had other plans. We all had other plans. And it's surreal, you know, as a civilian who is not a doctor, but appreciates and respects science. I think sage advice is so needed. And I'm brokenhearted that it's become political. This isn't even politics. This is literally us as human connected people making each other safe. And I love what you're saying about individual health and public health and how this is a public health concern. So thank you for saying that. And, you know, if you guys have questions, this is the person to ask. She has been on the front lines, the forefront, forward thinking, quickly pivoted from shared harvest funds to putting her medical degree to work for our communities. And we were with Blackbird, instead of the concert, we shut down and we were able to host the pilot for
You
myCovidMD.
can say the original.
The original. I'm gonna say it. We were the original when we had a space.
Testing center.
We're centering it on us, okay?
Yes.
And then we'll put it back on y'all. But what I want to say about that and why I'm a supporter and I donate to it, and it's a mission that I believe in, is they run an incredibly tight ship. It's warm. These pop-ups are unlike anything you'll ever. I just did not know what you were thinking. And it's that kind of thinking. I think that women of color, Black women, we're entrepreneurs. We just come up with things that are soulful, and you connected testing with a celebration of community. There's a DJ, there's a food truck, there's like, it's, you don't know, this is like testing. I was like, you're doing testing now in South LA. Should I go? I don't need to have a test, but can I drive by and be part of the DJ party? No, I don't. I'm not advocating for that. You can't, they're busy. But what I'm saying is it's run so well. Let's talk about your initiative. Let's start with that, because we care, we love our community. You are friends and members and family of Blackbird. It means so much to us. Each individual makes part of the collective. So we can't do this alone. Yeah. And what you've done for community is, can you talk about your passion for community and what your concept was behind doing it this way?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it is what it is. You know, there's a reason why whether any kind of corporate setting, professional setting, diversity, there's a reason why diversity is important. We the diversity, the numbers, the inclusion, they say, is the act of being and really using those brilliant minds in the space to make your organization better. And what I realized, and why I'm so passionate about it, is my lived experience is what makes me an awesome doctor. I know I'm an awesome doctor. I'm sorry. I'm just going to get excited about that. And it's not because I'm smarter than the next person. It's because I know how to connect real science with real people. And a lot of times in these moments when you think that, there's someone smarter out there than you, it doesn't even matter that they're smarter. If it doesn't apply to your life, it's not going to work. And if it's in the public health crisis, that's what it's like. There were solutions happening, billions of dollars being spent here, millions of dollars being sent there, create the mega testing center on the top of the hill, and no one's there, and people are suffering. And so for me, in the medical community, a lot of people say you can't wear your emotions on your heart. I'm sorry. There's a reason why I went to medicine, because I am a heartful person. And that heartful emotion that I have connected to my community is the reason why I continue to do better and innovate for the community. Because if it's not for, what is it for? What is it for? And when we're talking about vaccines and we're talking about innovation in science, for what? For humanity, right? And if we can't figure out a way to help the poorest, the lowest, the destitute, we're nothing. We are really nothing. We're seeing that right now. There's no better parallel than how, in the midst of the pandemic, you have a Black Lives Matter movement. There is the reality of that. And now people are the wake-up moment that the rest of the world, not just the United States, the world is seeing. We have done a terrible job with humanity. And the public health crisis is just it's just just a window to what we have done. And now let's blow it up and fix it. And like you had mentioned, Black women all over the world, amazing women, brilliant ideas. We are mothering. We are thinking about the holistic approach to solving the problem. And to that extent, I don't even know how to separate that with my entrepreneurship and my life and the work that I'm doing. That's why it's so fulfilling. People laugh. They're like, you have this pop-up, but you're all over the place and you're talking to everybody, because I feed off of it. I learn from so many people's questions and concerns. I go back and that's a great question. I don't know why we haven't thought about that. And then I do the research and I figure out, okay, that didn't work. So then I bring it back, That's how science and humanity informs one another, you know? And I bring this up and I'll talk about this later, but you know, everyone here is like, what about the vaccine? What about the vaccine? What about the vaccines? And I say, you know, if you have to learn anything about history, you have to understand the setting and the environment before the vaccine hits. And the pre-trial exposure for the community is so important. So what I mean by that, and I break it out, if you don't have access to testing for a community before you even drop a vaccine, how the heck can you impose a vaccine and vaccine trials on that same community?
Wow.
That is a very important thing that us as a community who have been deeply exploited by science have to think about. What are the public health services, resources, and channels of access do we have before we even start talking about the vaccine? Because other than that, then you're just another guinea pig. Of course, they're going to start talking about your issues and your concerns once the vaccine's out and they need some trials and they need some test people, right? But that is not the time to talk about access and resources. It's not. Way before the vaccine comes in.
Okay, well, we'll get more into that later, but for anyone who's just joining, we have this opportunity to ask sage questions from Dr. Nana. She's on the front lines and is also doing pop-up testing in the community. And for this is learning so much and has so much knowledge in these months now that we've been in this situation. So please ask your question. There is no dumb question. And we're talking about like, okay, so you started this conversation with where we are again.
Yes.
And we're talking about that. Now, there's so much misinformation that's coming from lack of leadership. We're not talking politics at this moment, but where do we go for sage advice, sane information, something that, you know, I know you are growing and learning as you go, but where can we go? Because the CDC now we hear is not going to be able to post the results and okay, so shared harvest funds, like go to myCovidMD.com. Okay, thank you. I don't know how y'all doing that, broadcasting and doing this. I'm gonna have to learn from y'all. But myCovidMD.com, great.
Yeah.
And what are the biggest strategies and tips that you want to impart on our community right now?
I think, you know, we still have to understand that the institutions that we've established for medical information and public health information, they've been around for a long time. Okay. So even in the turmoil, there's some basic fundamentals that you can get from those institutions. And when I say that, no information you're going to get is going to be 100% foolproof. This is a time that you can rely on your common sense, okay? But you do that with guidance. So I would still say go to the WHO website. The WHO website has a 20-point myth busting about a lot of things that we talk about. You know, should I take antibiotics while exposed to the virus? Will that help? No, because it's a virus and antibiotics are for bacterial infections. Those kind of places where WHO facts page, definitely something not arguable. CDC facts page, definitely unarguable. There are different organizations like the NIH that has also fact-based pages. And these are, again, institutions are going to come and go no matter what our political climate is. And there are individuals who have been there and spending their life dedicated to providing resources that make sense. Now, that being said, there is a lot of information that's coming out in the media every single day. And what I've said before on your channel is it's okay if you hear it, write it down. If it doesn't make sense to you, send us an email, myCovidMD.org. Just, I want to make sure this is right. This is what I heard. And if this is right, you can drop it on an Instagram, anywhere. And this is why we exist. Because one is the testing, but the big thing is disseminating of facts. Once you get the facts right, and I will, every single time anyone sends us an email or a question, we back it up with a document that you can read. So it's not just my word versus what you heard, but so that you can start building your own scientific understanding of how to filter through some of this information. That's the most important thing. The other thing is start building community, as the Blackbird is, but you may have your own community around you that you're going through this. And that is so important. We're willing to do webinars with the community for free. If you get 4 or 5 people together and you start on a weekly basis, just tease out what you guys have heard, and who's doing what and why is it, because a lot of times people are afraid to tell each other what they're doing. And then all of a sudden you get a phone call, somebody ended up in the hospital. Wow. And then that's the concern. You don't want to wait till after the fact. myCovidMD came ahead of the game because we wanted to address the issue before it got to the hospital. To the point of treatment right now, a lot of the treatments that are out there are based on testing that's done on critical patients at the hospital level. So if you are healthy and you test positive, you have a different work protocol. You have a different plan of action than somebody who's in the hospital testing positive. And that is important to know the difference. Okay. And so you shouldn't be running around trying to get the latest, hottest treatment or getting yourself on steroids, dexamethasone, for example, which a lot of people have been talking about, just because you tested positive. That actually can have some side effects for you. So those are the kind of things where you have to make sure it's applicable to you and understand where the data is coming from.
That's vital. And thinking about it being applicable to you is huge. I have to say, I wasn't thinking about that either, because we hear the scary statistics of a healthy 32-year-old, if you're over 60, if you're under this, now if it's over the information, like you said, but the idea of starting groups and talking to each other, because I was ready to order some Pepcid AC because they did a study I think it was in Mexico, where they were like, there's a group in Mexico that was taking Pepcid AC and they had lower symptoms. And it was like, yeah, why? I mean, there's no harm in taking Pepcid AC. I have no indigestion, and I don't know. I'm admitting I stay pretty aware. I read a lot, but I'm ready to order me some Pepcid AC.
Exactly. And that's the honest truth conversations that you should have with your small circles. And you'll be surprised, you start asking yourself, you start hearing yourself, you just said, well, I don't have any GI symptoms. Well, why was I getting excited? Because I read about Pepcid AC. And that's usually what happens, you start thinking about where you draw the lines and connect the dots between your experience and what you're reading about. The truth of the matter is, even as I gave you the stats, there are, especially in the last 2 weeks, we've seen a surge of positive cases. In Los Angeles alone, not only are those cases just positive and not symptomatic or are not hospitalizable, we have seen a surge of cases that are being hospitalized. Oh, so wow. There is that concern that there is still a population who are really at risk. For those who are testing positive and not symptomatic, you still want to identify, and I say the best thing you can do is start writing a symptom journal. What are you feeling? Who are you in contact with? Is that sneezing? I give you another one. Many people are wearing masks, which are great, but then they're sneezing 3 or 4 times in the same mask. Well, there are other infections and viruses out there right now that will cause you to get sick. And so you still want to remove that mask, wash that mask, have an alternative mask with you, especially if you're having multiple sneezing spells. If you're having multiple sneezing spells, you have to think about the environment that you're in right now. And do you not need to do what you're doing right now? Take a break and figure out if the environment is causing you to have some kind of allergic response. And especially because right now, if you think about when we think about our kids, right? When the kids are young, they get sick like crazy, but they're all around each other. They pass out the cooties like crazy, right? You can tell the difference between the kids who are germ-free, the parents are real extra cautious, right? And then the other ones are like, oh, they're gonna build resilience, which is good. This is the same environment where we've been in 4 months of sanitization, okay? 4 months. So there are viruses that are not COVID that are out there that are very resilient right now, and that you yourself are getting exposed in a different way. So where in the summer you didn't have allergies, all of a sudden we're seeing people's allergies spike. And that is the normal trend when we are living in an environment that we have been living in for the past 4 months, if that makes sense.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. So, uh, what are we saying about that? What do you mean? You know, we always have our seasonal allergies, and we hear of people, you know, I've had friends who've had the worst flu. They actually lost their sense of smell and have been tested multiple times and don't have COVID.
Yeah.
But it's like, we never heard of losing your smell, but now anything you get, you're pretty sure it's going to be the worst virus. So you're saying, what are you saying about, do we need to take extra care? Are those viruses mutating, or you're just saying that we also have to take care of those, just to clarify?
So clarify, what we're saying is that there are viruses like the common cold that are becoming more and more virulent right now because of the environment that we live in, right? Are they going to kill you? Probably not, right? Are they going to bother your immune system a little bit more than usual? Probably will.
Wow.
And so just being in tune to the environment you have, the symptoms you have. Some people are walking around, they're like, I don't have fever, but I feel hotter than normal. Well, some people's temperature cadence has actually got higher than usual. So those are the kind of things you do want to, maybe you're not at 100.3, but you're steady, and now everyone's getting tested with their temperature. You're steady at just below normal, right? Just above normal. Maybe that's something you're noticing, or you're starting having a lot of congestion, but you're okay. Some people are saying I feel a little more winded than I am normally, and so those are things we still don't have enough data to know what this is, right? So the best thing you can do for yourself is know the symptoms that you're experiencing, so that as things escalate, you have your journal, your diary. You're going to inform your doctor if you have one on how your symptoms are, how you're responding to things. And the most important thing is you'll be able to know when you need to be at the hospital, because this is different, versus when you can quarantine at home, you know. Those are the most important things, because we don't know until you tell us what symptoms you have. And many times when we do what we call a tethering program, which is our version of contact tracing, which is much better, we start having these conversations, and all of a sudden I'm like, well, last week I spoke to you, you were walking around the block, and now you can't pass the front door. Maybe that's the only symptom you have, but I'm concerned. I think you should get a chest x-ray. So those are the kind of things that help me understand and well inform how your body is changing in this environment. The other thing I will say you made a great point about is when people are not testing positive for COVID necessarily. There has been conversations about people being exposed or having a second round of COVID. Well, keeping in mind, you have to have a certain viral load in order to be tested positive. So you can have a strong enough immune system that your viral load is not that high, your body has responded, but doesn't mean that you don't have a low level of exposure. So that is still something to be considered.
Wow. Can we talk a little bit more about that? Is there a certain, maybe in terms of testing too? And again, for anybody just joining, we're here with Dr. Nana, Dr. A. NanaEfua is an entrepreneur, founder of Shared Harvest Fund, an amazing organization in and of itself, and also recently founded myCovidMD. You can go to mycovidmd.com for very sage information, some fact sheets. But at this point, we have her right here with us, able to answer questions. If you have anything, don't worry about a stupid question. I already asked about Pepsid AC, so I already made a fool of myself. But really, we're talking about what are strategies for staying safe? And you talked about a symptom journal, because other things are going on that may not even be that are, you said the cold is more virulent. But what you just said right now as well is like, how do we, I guess, well, I want to talk about your contact tracing, because you call it tethering, right? And they just wrote trust, test, tether, how we approach testing. Great. So that's amazing. now people who are testing and don't have COVID, but have all these symptoms they've never had in their lives, you're saying they may have a low level version of something, even if they've done the nasal test, the blood draw test, the PCR, the finger prick, like someone who, like me, has done every one. But I don't even, maybe you have indigestion, you're like, oh, I got to get tested. But is there a difference to you among tests? We're hearing all the, tests are positive, they're not. So can you talk a little bit about the different types of tests and maybe go a little deeper into what you're saying about maybe having a low grade, some sort of something going on and what that means?
Yeah, so the testing issue is big and it's controversial for so many different reasons. First off, there's billions of dollars going into testing. So we have to be very clear that, unfortunately, even in the midst of public health crisis, there is an economic gain to be had. So right now, the tests that are available out there are your PCR, which is your nasal swab, the one that makes you feel like they stuck something up your brain,
It's horrible.
right?
It's horrible.
That's the test, and people better known as testing the COVID, right? So that's fine. That test is, and if I use the example, if the virus is wearing a jacket, it's testing the jacket. Okay. The antibody test is two types. There's two types of antibodies: early antibody and late antibody. Early antibody is better known as your IgM, M like Mary, and your late antibodies IgG, like Gary. The difference in your bloodstream is when the virus wants to be active, it will take off its jacket. And so your antibodies detect the jacket once it comes off. This is why you have an example like shingles, dormant viruses, because they hang around in your body and they never take their jacket off. Okay, so in the sense of the difference between the PCR and your antibody test is your PCR will test for the jacket on the virus, and your antibody tests for once it comes off, how are you responding to it? And to me, when I'm thinking about the world, we have all kind of stuff in the world, right? But I care about how am I going to respond to the things around me. And so that's why I value the antibody testing, because just like any other viruses that are out there, it only makes a difference if it's making you sick, right? Or it's making other people sick. And so our ability to understand how your immune system is responding to the virus is so critical. It's critical for vaccinations and critical for plasma studies and how we want to help each other by donating blood, all of those things. But the PCR does not give you any of that data. So just be very clear. People are like, well, do I have COVID? Well, that's great if you find out you have COVID, but that does not tell me how you are responding to COVID. Your clinical symptoms tell me how you're responding to COVID. And most importantly, your antibodies tell me how you're responding to COVID. For those who get really sick and never mount up an immune response, those are the immune compromised people. And so when we think about that, we have to think about how do we help them? And those are the people who are really dependent on the plasma exchange, other treatment opportunities. But if you're a person that's pretty healthy and we're seeing that you have IgM and IgG at the same time, and that was the highest spike we saw this weekend, that tells me that not only are you infected right now, but your body's building that memory, right? So the next time, if you get exposed, you may not have enough of viral load to even respond to it. Because your body's like, oh, I remember that. Let's just go ahead and squash this real quick and move on with our lives. It's the same thing as chickenpox. We've been exposed to chickenpox, but once you get the vaccine or the had it before, it's not an issue for you as much. And viruses are still, in essence, as new as this is, we call it the novel coronavirus. It's still a virus that we've learned so much about already in the short period of time within the house and context of viruses that we've been studying for years.
Okay, that's really important because we're hearing, again, if we see it in social media or in a news feed or headlines, they're saying don't count on an immunity. We don't know if it's going to last months. We don't know if it's going to last years. And what you're saying is you're better. It is reacting like a virus, and and maybe this is something to feel, not be reckless about, but to understand like your body already fought it off. So you do have a strong immune system, which is a little less scary. Even if it means you have to fight it again, it does feel better. That's such a more encouraging way. Not that it sounds sage, you know, like a factual, but it is more encouraging and less fear. I think there's so much fear in it right now.
And that's the point. That's, you know, encouragement does not, meet the headlines. It's not the thing that gets excited, right? The fear, the stress, all these headlines about. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be well informed, but not everything that's in the front page is the right source. And even if you look at even what they say, and then you read the article fully, then you'll see, oh, okay, they were like, well, actually, it's not that bad. Or you see the numbers and they're anecdotal cases. And the perfect example of that is how many times you hear a conversation about a young, healthy person who then dies of COVID, right? Even if that's the case, it's such a small fraction of those who are being infected. And so we've got to keep it again in context, and in context to your life and your experiences. We are seeing positive cases. We're seeing positive cases who go to quarantine, who do the right thing, who do just fine and come out just fine, right? That is important. And those conversations are not going to be always the ones that are going to make the headlines, but they're definitely important to know, to provide that reassurance. We're not out of the woods, but we have to understand that it's still a manageable, overall manageable virus to have.
That's really encouraging. Jazzy K61 has a great question. Can you explain the trust test tether process a bit more? Thank you. Thank you for your question.
So I love my team. So when we thought about this, we knew we had to get into communities, and we needed to go to the communities, meet people where they're at, and help them understand where they wanted to go with this. Meeting them where they're at is that trusted. So we partner in all of our pop-ups with a nonprofit. The past ones we've done People's Breakfast Oakland, which was an amazing partner. We partnered with Blackbird, of course, and recently Council District 8, Marquise Harris Johnson's Council for South LA. And that is important because these are the nonprofit organizations who have been in the community or have their level of trust already built with their community members. And so when we come in, we're saying, what are the questions? What is burning about what's going on here? And a lot of times we match that partnership with food distribution, with get out to vote awareness, with the census, with access to PPP, because we're not just here to test, we're here to meet the need of the community. So that's the one piece. And then the second piece is the test. So in our pop-up, our testing is there, but it's so much more than testing, right? So in addition to education, we have fireside chats and Q&A, ask me anything. In addition to that, we have informational, we have what we call a community health partner, which are partnership of volunteers who call every single person that's been tested and say, okay, here's your test results, but what other questions do you have? And who else is in your house? And how else can we help them? And that is an important piece to build trust, because we're not going away once we test you. We're here, and we're here for at least 30 days after you get tested. But we're really here for as many times if you have questions. And we offer anybody who gets tested an opportunity to get test again for free. So in addition to that, and then the tethering piece is that CHP piece, right? Because unfortunately, when you go to the mega testing centers, all you get is a paper with your results. And you have a bazillion questions, and it's hard to reach somebody. And so that is the most important part, is the ease of the anxiety and the feeling that you're all alone, because we're in a situation when the mental health right now is at its peak. And trying to help console people is even more important to helping reduce stress and getting people healthy, and so that they're fighting this virus and any other virus that is out there.
That's great. That's such a holistic process. And what I love about how you guys are doing it, why I'm excited to support what you're doing, because it's so vital. And this is Black BIPOC Mental Health Month, Black Indigenous People of Color, Black and Brown Mental Health Month, which is also really important. We're seeing cases, you know, public people in the news having flip outs. We're seeing things. We can't discount that this isolation, this quarantine, this distance nature. So that part of it, and having a community like you who's creating this safety and this, thank you, Nurse Dira, hi, vital, exactly what you're saying. But this taking care of our mental health comes a lot. If there's, you know, obviously if you have a any sort of medical need, that's one thing. But if you are having anxiety, natural depression, I'm just calling this like natural depression, because who isn't sad that they can't see their grandmother or whatever? It's just a hard time. Having people who can give you information, who understand, or coming to you from the sense of community is another thing that you're doing that I appreciate. Thank you, Don. Don says, talk that talk to us. Thank you for your comment. Again, anyone in there, please ask a question. This is a great time. We have about 10 more minutes with Dr. Nana, Shared Harvest Fund, and myCovidMD. Visit our behind the scenes photos of our testing around the city and other states. You guys have been in New York, you were in Atlanta, Georgia, you were in Oakland, you were in North Carolina. Did you know? You were in LA, all parts of LA, Santa Monica, Culver City first, then South LA, Inglewood, and just creating these partnerships and communities.
We're on Hawthorne about that.
Oh, nice.
It's going to be on our website, hopefully. And then we'll be back in South LA on Crenshaw, which is really going to be exciting. It's interesting because Hawthorne, home of Russell Westbrook, and he recently came out and said that he tested positive.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so it, you know, we talk about, again, you know, access to resources, access to testing allows others who are safe due to funding. Has only one testing site, and so that's another problem because the federal government is shutting down on the funding, and because of that, county and cities are, you know, looking at themselves and wondering if they can even do testing. And that's the irony behind it, because we know the only thing we have in our arsenal right now is testing and wearing masks, and we're for some reason we're not in unison about those two or more important things. But yeah, so we're still out here because the need is still great. It's still affecting community of colors more than anywhere else. And if we're not out here, no one's going to be out here. So we're out here.
Agreed. Yeah, we have a couple questions. Life Better 57 I think is commenting on the emotional toll that it is. I can't see my mom, and I worry that she may think we abandoned her. That's a great point. That's difficult. And I think if you can keep in contact, you know, I don't know the situation with your mother, if she's able to talk on the phone, or if you can send care packages separately, but what kind of strategies do you have for families that are isolated for this very reason?
Mm-hmm. We actually do a lot of counseling around that for that reason. I know in the beginning,
your connection's going a little bit
so
out.
that they can. Oh, is it?
Yes. Okay, go ahead. You were saying you do some counseling around that. I think the connection with Dr. If you guys have any questions, we have about 5 more minutes. Are you okay? There you are. Oh,
yeah. This
is so good. Okay, I think you're there. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So we were doing more testing, especially for older families and those who were, because the biggest problem is, you know, it's social distancing when you're dealing with multi-generational, taking care of multi-generational families. And that's usually what people of color have. You know, they have the parents, they have grandparents in their homes as well. And sometimes grandparents are taking care of the kids. So we did testing and provided a care plan so that it would be easier to see loved ones. And that's important because it's not, again, it's you don't have to isolate. You just
Okay.
have to be very cautious in your exposure. But if you don't know the things that put your individual parent or loved one, you think all you can do is just not see them. And I want to, that's furthest from the
Okay.
truth. It's important to understand what those high risks are. I will never forget one of the last pop-ups we did at Blackbird. This woman who was in her 70s came in on her bike, and she probably looked more fit than I am. She could have ran cycled a marathon or whatever. And she said, tested because I used to play poker with all these youth, and then they just left me. And I want them to know that it's safe to come back. But it
Great.
is that, because especially at that age where connecting with others on a very vital, it's what keeps you energized. So definitely.
That's great. And it's good to hear you say, and I think, reach out to my ask them questions, because what you just said about not isolating is so important. I even have friends who who are over 70 and they won't leave their house. I was like, okay, what if we all get tested and then we meet socially distanced with masks outside? Like, how about we do that? They are not leaving the house. I don't think they left in 5 months. I have another couple friends who are younger, and they haven't left since they started talking about it in January. Now,
See?
so I think that's really helpful. Don had a question. I think it's a really good question. Speak to the particular relationship between race and COVID.
Yeah. So, I mean, this relationship is something that we've researched to death way before COVID even existed. And that is the issue of public health and racism, and how access to resources for particularly people of color affects their ability to deal with basic medical needs, whether there is what we call a medical drought of resources, and how that compromises individuals 3, 4, 5 steps away from actually accessing care, right? When you have
Terrible.
diabetes, it's not just out of the blue that you have diabetes. It's diabetes with the inability to have access to proper nutrition and a nutrition plan. Because let's be real, how many times is it hard to even think about what I'm supposed to eat, right?
Right.
We make things so easier said than done, but the reality is it is hard. It is hard to juggle, and if you don't have access to the right educational tools and resources, you're not going to get ahead. And we see this time and time again. And when we talk about access in terms of COVID specifically, like what we just talked about with families. You can't social distance, and if you're a frontline worker, you're an essential worker, right? Where other people are like, I'm going to take 4 months off and get, paid for it, you know, other people are still trying to figure out how to get home, get to work,
Yes.
and still not infect their family, because that's not an option. We have single moms with asthma, and they're trying to take care of their individual kids. We have kids in foster care who their foster parents are older, and how is now separation of family? All these issues come into play, and COVID is just a magnifying lens to things that we've already researched, written incredible books about. Credible authors have addressed this issue, and even in light of it right now, we're still not addressing it. Money is not going into the access and resources. Money is not going into testing. So this is what I was circling back before. You will see a surge of money and interest for trials, getting people into clinical trials. But that money should be happening right now, getting access to testing. Everyone should be having access to free medical advice anywhere you go. And that
Agree.
is not happening yet. In terms of wrapping around social services, it's an essential part of the myCovidMD initiative because we know that health does not exist in isolation. If you don't have that social support, you aren't going to get healthy. And so that having access to social services is important. To the point of mental health, we partner with the American Society of Black Psychiatrists to start helping to sponsor healing circles and to continue the pipeline of mental health counseling, that we can now become a referral agent to them as well. And we are looking at funding and resources with NIH to make sure that every single mental health counseling session is free and paid for. And these are important things. It's not just about the test. It's not about what me
Vital.
as an individual is going to do with your test results. It's about how are we going to help you get through this very serious and very ubiquitous virus that we have right now.
Well said, and really vital points that you touch on every single factor, and that really wraps it around to how it's affecting Black and Brown communities more, the marginalized. Thank you for that. And we have a couple of questions. I want to try to, we only have about a couple minutes left,
Okay.
but hopefully we can get through
Try to
these.
make my
Instagram only gives us a minute. I think we need like hours. But again, this is a health update. We're having resurgence. This is an important time. Go to myCovidMD. If you can't, I have Shared Harvest Fund down here, but mycovidmd.com. It's very easy to type in. And they will answer your questions and bring support. Anna Green Callie has a great question. If you can, hopefully we can briefly do this before Instagram cuts us off, but can you speak to progress achieved to the effects of COVID-19 on pregnancies? It's all very vague. Thank you for your question.
Yeah, it is a very vague thing, and that the reason why is for that reason that population can't be studied well because they're high risk populations. So all of the data around pregnancy as well as data around youth is very anecdotal. It really is. I go back to common sense. When you're healthy before your pregnancy, that's the bar that you need to maintain in terms of your health and welfare. I will say one thing that's very important in terms of exercise, physical activity, movement, very, very important in your immune system. But be cautious. Do not wear your mask while you're working out. And the reason why I say that, people don't know that you sweat in your mask, you build other infection microbials in the mask. It is not a protective barrier once it's wet. So it's very important that you think about that, especially also your ability to breathe well while you're wearing the mask. So I just want to make sure people to caution them. You should definitely social distance during working out, but it's not essential to actually physically wear the mask while you're working out.
Interesting. Should you be outside then? Because we're talking about, I've been reading, or I was reading an article about the amount of time, how distance you're apart, and if you're in a closed space, how it can stay the long, like the choirs that all sing.
Exactly.
How do you do that with working out you're saying working out alone, or you're saying working out in, like, are we going back to working out in groups?
If you're working out in groups, you should work out in groups outside. Again, the fact that we're talking about aerosolization versus non, if you do social distancing accurately while you're out working out outside, that is the most ideal. I still am not a proponent to working out inside in groups for that reason.
Yeah, it's not comfortable. People are like,
It's not.
you really talk about aerializing,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
however you say that word. We have one more question. Can you speak to the virus that science says is coming in the winter months and it's going to be worse? Maybe we can fold that in and wrap up that same thing with kind of talk about that, and then close us out talking about vaccines and how to look at that, because I know that these are two important things. Great question, and this is important. And we're signing off shortly. If you guys signed in, we really appreciate it. This is an important conversation with myCovidMD and Shared Harvest Fund. We'll try to put this to IG if we can get all of our words in. So go ahead, I'll let you answer that question.
Yeah, so just real quick, the vaccination trials there are very few of them in phase 3. Phase 3 means that it's common people trying it out. Right now, it's not common. It's those people who are hospitalized and the highest risk. So to the extent that vaccine trials are right around the corner, not the case. Please be honest with yourselves about that. The second wind is the first one. So there's going to be a fusion because we've never got down, remember? We didn't get down.
Okay.
And what they're talking about in the winter months is now you have that influenza, RSV for kids. So we're talking about a lot of several different viruses all coming together at one time. It's very important to continue to stay connected with each other, do the most common things that we say, the COVID kiss. Just keep yourself well hydrated. Urine, the virus comes out of your urine. Gotta pee, gotta urinate. That means you gotta drink a lot of water.
Okay.
You have to use a mask. You have to wash your hands regularly. Keep your positivity going, keep your energy going. It helps to get moving, to reduce that feeling of depression, and you connect to community. I'm telling you, community is therapeutic. It gets you the answers you need, and it gets you to know where to go when you don't have the answers. And with that, I think that's the most important thing. Everything else, we'll figure it out together.
Thank you. That's well said and beautiful. Thank you, everybody who joined. We're here with Dr. Nana. NanaEfua is a frontline doctor, ER in the ER. She's on the front lines and also just creating this opportunity for our community to stay connected and to get health and care. And you guys have sites on Saturdays for this month, or where can people find? Go to myCovidMD and you'll see what they're doing. But is there any brief thing like where are we going?
You can sign up. myCovidMD.app, app is where you actually sign up, and then you can find out where the next event is, or you can sign up to volunteer if you ever want to be a volunteer for what we're doing. If you're volunteering, we do offer a student debt relief component to that. But this is a great opportunity for health educators and those and nurses, doctors, anyone in the medical profession to give back to their community, but also to be part of history, because this is a public health history that we are in the making, being on the right side of it. And in terms of finding the next location, I believe August 15th is the official next pop-up site. We are potentially getting one on August 10th, but you can go to or you can find us on Eventbrite too, myCovidMD on Eventbrite. You can find our listing as well over there. Yeah,
thank you everyone for signing on.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, NanaEfua. It's always great to see you. Thank you everyone from Chicago to LA. I love, we asked LA. So, well, thank you all. And even Northern California, Princess. Really appreciate this. Again, we'll come back and do another update soon, but right now, just go right to get your resources. Community is important. You guys are important to us. Community is keeping us afloat and like hopeful. And in this profound time, taking care of each other, there's so much you can do. Wear a mask. That's not that hard.
Not that hard.
If you're in a group, it's like, don't be around them. It's not political. It's just health. Thank you. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, what y'all talking about? Let's just get real. But, you know, let's support each other at this time. Reach out to your community.
What's going on?
I think you kind of went out a little bit, but yeah, wear the mask. I think we all agree on that. It's not political. Thank you.
There's so many jazzy masks out there now.
Yes, so much fashion in masks. Really killing it. So, you know, it's the current statement. It's what it is. It's public health. It's community. I always appreciate these talks with you. It's so encouraging. Reach out, be with community. This is an emotional wavy time for us. Come in for a meditation class with us. Move your body, walk in your neighborhood, walk up and down some stairs, like do something to.
Oh, we lost you.
We look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you, Dr. Nana. Thank you, Shared Harvest Fund. And thank you, myCovidMD.
God bless. Thank you all. God bless everyone.
Bye.